Welcome you all to our session today. The session's hosted by People's Courage International. The topic of today's session is going to be scaling worker protection, how business can advance parametric insurance for climate resilience for its workers. I just wanted to introduce PCI, People's Courage International. People's Courage International is a nonprofit based in the US. It houses multiple programs, but the largest and the flagship program is Migrants Resilience Collaborative. Essentially, it's a flagship social protection programs that want to cover millions of migrant workers in India and also in some parts of Southeast Asia, Bangladesh, Nepal, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Essentially, social protections and what that program entails is three pillars. The first pillar is access to social security benefits. There are multiple state-sponsored and centrally sponsored social security benefits. The MRC program that PCI supports facilitates social security benefits at a run rate of around 300,000 applications per month. We're there in 12 states in India. We operate over 90 districts with a field team of over 1,200 people on the ground. That's one part of the work. Till now, we have covered over 10 million social security benefits thus far in the last 3.5 odd years. The second part of the work that we do is the worker protection work that we do. So from a prevention activity and making the workers aware of what workplace violations are and how do you seek a recourse or how do you seek some remedy when you encounter them as part of your employment journey. So we do prevention activity, and at that point of time, we disseminate our national helpline number. We run a national helpline number in India. It's a toll-free helpline over 6 different languages, 24 hours of the day. We get about 15,000 calls every month. We register about 1,500 serious cases of workplace violations between forced labor, child labor, gender-based violence at workplace, and non-payment of wages. So some of the impact numbers that we've achieved so far is we have rescued over 5,000 workers from forced labor, and we've also helped recover over $3.8 million of unpaid wages over the last 3.5 odd years. And just for context, daily wage in India is anywhere between $5 and $10. So this is a sizable amount, and most of the operations in India, irrespective of what sector or industry the workers are a part of, the employment is mostly informal, so they encounter a lot of workplace violations. So this is about PCI and this is about the MRC program. So as you can see, as an organization and as a program, we have a lot of legacy working with millions of migrant and informal workers across multiple businesses and multiple value chains. We have worked across construction, FMCG, farm, at the farm level with farm workers over multiple agro commodities and the ready-made garment sector. Over time and over the course of the program, we were able to visibly see the impacts of climate risks that the informal workers were encountering. Because a big part of the legacy of the work that we do is with construction workers. We came up with 1 or 2 problem statements that we identified internally to ideate to see what sort of possible and scalable solutions exist for that climate vulnerability. So I just wanted to state 2 problem statements that we focused on, that we actually designed and implemented real-world pilots on the ground. So the first one is poor air quality. In Delhi, the national capital region of India, the population is over 25 million. There's a lot of construction activity that does happen in the NCR region. And every year in the winter months between November through February, there is a very high AQI. AQI, for those of you that do not know, is air quality index, where the air becomes heavier, the visibility on the street, there's a lot of smog in the air. So what the government does to mitigate for this, it bans a lot of outdoor activities, leaving tens of thousands of construction workers and other outdoor informal workers losing their livelihoods. Just for the scale of the impact, just to showcase the scale of the impact, over last year, over a period of 75 calendar days, there was bans on activities over 30 calendar days. So when you have to put your mind in the mind of a migrant and informal worker when they are seasonally migrating for a particular occupation, all these bans and uncertainty cause them to leave their workplace and eventually cause for a lack of, it's a livelihood shock. And so we assess the impact on the ground to see what are the behaviors of the migrant and informal workers. Do they need cash because they really don't have day-to-day cash for daily consumables? So we were thinking about what the ground impact is and what is the immediate relief that they need as part of a solution. So that was one problem statement. The second problem statement that we focused on was heat stress. We work with a lot of informal and outdoor migrant workers in factories, the gig and platform workers, and construction workers. In the summer months, in the northern and central parts of India, the temperature crosses well above 45 degrees. I would say that's the average temperature, like mid 40s is the average temperature throughout the season. And there's some days where the temperature goes to 48, 49, and even 50 degrees. So we were thinking about how heat impacts informal and migrant workers as part of like multiple value chains. And heat was a unique problem statement where there were no bans on activities and no two individuals or workers experienced heat the same way. So there were factors like age, there were factors like gender, how much of hydration they had in that day, and what is the physical activity that they're doing on that day for them to feel that heat stress on that day. So there were multiple factors that affected the workers during a very hot day, and no two individuals experienced heat in the same way. But what we realized on the ground is that there were health shocks that were experienced by the workers. And what was an outcome of the health shock was there was absenteeism in work. They were not able to show up for work the next day, and there was a loss of livelihood as well. So across the board, we were seeing two shocks that the climate risks were posing. One was an income shock, where they were losing livelihoods, and the other one was a health shock. And interesting to see the business behavior around this. So one, like when there's a construction ban in the ecosystem, business sees this as a force majeure event. They see daily wage workers as if you do not show up for work, you don't get paid for that day. So there's no protection mechanism that the businesses are currently providing. And on the heat side, there was no respite for the workers that were working. So especially on occupations where you're paid against productivity, like if you're a gig and platform worker, you get paid on number of deliveries you do in a day. That dips in a hot season. If you're a factory worker in the garment space, you're always pegged to a productivity, per hour productivity. So the expectation of an employer was for you to be equally productive today as you were last week, as you were last month, irrespective of the heat that's there, like outside before they enter the factory and within the factory premises as well. So these were the two problem statements that we wanted to first try and mitigate. And we came up with parametric insurance as a scalable, very bespoke. It can be designed for the particular use case, and it was extremely scalable as a solution. So we designed two parametric insurance like a product for both the instances of AQI and for heat stress. Now, just to explain what parametric insurance is, it's basically a climate risk insurance. We knew that there was income shocks and health shocks. So we wanted to design a cash transfer program, but with an insurance model that was front-ending it, where the trigger events as part of the insurance was going to be climate parameters. So if you see the product triggers for both the individual products, in one case was the daily maximum temperature, that was the heat stress product. In the other case was the daily maximum air quality index. And we pegged that to the construction bans that were happening. The period of the covers, both, so one was over the winter, which was AQI, where it peaks over the winter months, and then the heat stress was over the months of summer. We did the two pilots for over 15,000 construction and outdoor workers. And we really understood what the cash needs are to design for the premiums as part of the cash and the payouts. So what is the bare minimum amount that's required for construction workers, for daily outdoor workers to survive in that period of where they are susceptible to a health shock or an income shock? We also designed a hospitalization cash assistance part as part of the insurance product as well. So not just a cash transfer after a trigger is breached. Over the course of 4 months, if you get hospitalized for whatever reason, then you can file a claim, and we facilitate that claim for this particular worker group. That's some of the numbers on what the maximum payout thresholds were. We intentionally wanted to keep it a lot less because we wanted to cover a lot more workers, and we also wanted to showcase to industry that this is very low cost as an intervention that you can do. It is low cost and high impact, low cost on a per capita basis, but high impact when you see if there is a trigger breached, when companies are not intervening directly, you're transferring that climate risk onto the insurer and you're paying a premium against that, like a risk transfer. In the two pilots, we had a cash payout of $11,000. And we have two videos as part of these two pilots where we've spoken to some of the beneficiaries. They are able to speak to us about what their impacts were, what they did with the cash, and how it impacted their lives at a time of need when businesses did not step in to protect them. I'll just request my colleague to play the AQI video. So the two videos. So the first one is on the air quality index. That's the insurance pilot done.
प्रदूषण लगते हैं तो पता भी नहीं चलता, हम लोग फ़ोन में देखते हैं फिर भी नहीं मानते कि ऐसे ही झूठ बोल रहे हैं। तो हम चौक पे भी जाते हैं, वो लोग भी बोलते हैं काम तो बंद हो गया। दिसंबर में बंद हो जाता है काम। जैसे थोड़ा पैसा जोड़ के रखते हैं ना बैंक में से, वही निकाल के खाते हैं। कभी ऐसे भी दिन होते हैं कि कभी ना खाए हुए भी रहना पड़ता है।
सर जो प्रदूषण का बैन जो लगता है कम से कम 2 बार तो कन्फर्म लगना लग जाता है। तो जब मैं 10 किलो आटा लेता था, अब मैं 5 किलो आटा लेता हूँ। इस तरह दूध मेरे पर आधी किलो आता था, अब 10 रुपये थैली लाना पड़ रही है। फिर मकान किराए के लिए मतलब कुछ दवा कम ही नहीं करता है।
जैसे नवंबर दिसंबर में प्रदूषण की वजह से काम बंद हो जाते हैं। जैसे बड़े बड़े ठेकेदार होते हैं उनके काम चालू रहता है, लेकिन छोटे मोटे जो ठेकेदारें हैं, चाहे हम लोग मजदूर वर्कर हैं, सब हम लोग का काम बंद हो जाता है। थोड़ा बहुत इसमें परेशानी हो जाती है। कभी ऐसे मान लीजिए मकान मालिक का किराया उराया देना हो तो मकान मालिक को बोलने लगते हैं किराया दो, नहीं तो खाली कर दो।
Thank you. So that was the AQI product. Omega, if you can play the heat stress product, and you just listen to some of the actual beneficiaries as part of the product. So they were they were informed about what the insurance is. So there was a lot of interest from their side. And after they received the cash payouts, it was very impactful for them at a time of need. Where businesses were not stepping in, they did not have money in their hands, but an insurance product has come to save the day. Now we'll be playing the heat stress. It's a very similar design, but with a health shock protection angle as well. It's not just a cash transfer program, but also protects against health shocks.
परेशानी तो आती है, काम करते वक्त चक्कर वगैरह आते हैं, शरीर में परेशानी होती है तो छुट्टी लेके घर जाना पड़ता है। पैसे के लिए मैनेजमेंट करना पड़ता है, गांव में भी घर बार देखना पड़ता है।
अगर हम काम नहीं करेंगे तो पैसा मिलेगा नहीं, हमको सैलरी कट जाती है, तो फिर हमको राशन पानी में उसमें भी दिक्कत आती है, हमको घर पैसा नहीं भेज पाते हैं।
नहीं, ठेकेदार के तो उसमें से कोई सुविधा नहीं, बस काम करो, अपना जो दिहाड़ी बने उसका पैसे ले लो, बस हो गए। और ना काम करो तो ना मिले पैसे।
गर्मी की वजह से तो एक तो दस्त होते हैं और दूसरा चक्कर आते हैं, कभी आदमी चक्कर से गिर भी पड़ता है।
कंपनी में काम करेंगे तो पैसा मिलेगा, नहीं करेंगे तो नहीं मिलेगा पैसा। जब छुट्टी करते हैं तो पैसा कटता है, तो नहीं पूरे महीने का मैनेजमेंट नहीं होता है तो बाहर से भी कर्ज लेना पड़ता है।
बीमा का पैसे मिले हैं हमको, जिसको हम अपने राशन पानी में जो भी रूम का होता है उसमें यूज करेंगे, अपनी दवाई वगैरह में यूज करेंगे।
हमारे पास अभी कोई मदद नहीं है, पहली बार है 1000 रुपया है इसको।
इससे पहले मेरे को कोई मदद नहीं मिली। मैं तो ये चाहता हूँ कि जैसे कि ये बीमा काम कर रहा है, पैसा दे रहा है, तो इस तरीके से देता रहे हमेशा, तो अच्छा रहेगा।
हम गर्मी में काम करते हैं, हमारी जो सैलरी कट जाती है, उससे जो हमारे परेशानी आती है, राशन पानी में परेशानी आती है और अपनी दवाइयों में परेशानी आती है, वो इससे थोड़ा कंट्रोल होता है।
सर सबसे पहले तो योजना तो अच्छी है, इससे हमको भी लाभ होगा, हमारी फैमिली को भी होगा। इससे जैसे बीमार होते, पैसा नहीं था आज मेरे पास, मेरे घर में बच्चे बीमार हैं, उसको दिखाएंगे, नहीं होता तो किसी से कर्ज लेते, कर्ज कोई देता है, कर्ज कोई नहीं देता, तो इससे तो बेनिफिट बढ़िया है, एक योजना चलनी चाहिए।
फायदा तो बहुत होगा बीमा के पैसे से। जैसे घर गृहस्थी है, वो किसी चीज़ के लिए तंग ना रहेगी, दवाई दूरी के लिए और राशन के लिए काम आता रहेगा पैसा।
तो मैं चाहता ही हूँ कि बीमा जैसे चीज़ें चलती रहे, सब हेल्प होता रहे थोड़ी बहुत इधर से, तो फिर आदमी को आसान हो जाता है। और भी
Thank you. So we just wanted to showcase the real world impact of some of these products. What we did is just the tip of the iceberg. Parametric insurance products can be very bespoke. They can be for multiple climate stresses. It can be very tailored to the requirements of the workers, of the particular geography, and of maybe multiple businesses as well. So with this, I'd like to cut to the panel discussion that we have. So we're going to have a panel discussion for the next 40 minutes. We have a very diverse panel. So I'd request my panelists, Aarti, Rakesh, and Ayandev to join. You can sit anywhere. It's fine. Right. So to kick off, I'd like to first welcome all three panelists and also give a brief round of introduction. Aarti Kapoor is the founder and executive director of MBoard. Aarti is a lawyer by training and has over 25 years of experience dedicated to human rights with a focus on forced labor, human trafficking, and child exploitation. MBoard is a business and a human rights consultancy based in Southeast Asia. I have Ayandev Saha in the middle, who is the lead climate risk adaptation and insurance at KM Dasto Reinsurance Brokers. Ayandev has over 18 years of experience in designing and implementing climate risk insurance in the Afro-Asian region, working with multiple governments, multilaterals, industry, and communities. And lastly, my colleague, Rakesh Narayana, who's the director of worker-centered business and human rights at PCI. So Rakesh has over 16 years of experience across multiple sectors, developmental research, program implementation with a strong focus on labor rights and social justice. So to start off, I have a rapid fire question, and I'm going to start off with Rakesh first. So Rakesh, you represent the CSO, you're going to represent the worker voice. From your vantage point, what do you see as the biggest gap in protecting vulnerable workers in supply chains from climate shocks today?
Thanks, Rohit. Good afternoon, all. So by now, we are all familiar with that any discussion around climate change, it has to start with some statistics about rising temperature, rising sea level, and so on. That's almost a cliche. But I request you to allow me also to start similarly. In parts of India, in the summer of 2024, the temperatures breached 52.9 degrees Celsius in many cities. I just want you to think about this number for a minute to go beyond the statistics. Just think about 52.9 degrees Celsius. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. And now you imagine that you're an outdoor worker or an informal worker. At 52.9 degrees Celsius, you have to work for 8 hours or maybe 12 hours. Maybe in your work site, you don't have access to breaks, you don't have access to safe water. Maybe there are no toilet facilities, and you have to work in these conditions. And then once you come back home, you still do not have relief because maybe you live in a house that has tin roofs, and tin roofed house act as a heat trap. So this stark picture that I've painted is actually the reality for millions of workers across South Asia and Southeast Asia. Coming to the question of gaps, over the last few years, there's been a lot of knowledge around climate change and heat stress. The body of knowledge is increasing. But unfortunately, what we notice is that the climate adaptability measures in terms of programs on the ground that directly impact workers, the programs are not keeping pace with the knowledge production that's happening. So I want to talk of three main gaps with regard to this. First is the financing gap. There's one study that shows that out of all the climate-related financing happening, only 5% of those budgets go to climate adaptation programs. And even within climate adaptation, most of the amount is dedicated to high risk or a calamity event like a flood or something similar. Slow onset events like heat stress and pollution kind of based events, they're not given as much importance in the program as some of the other programs are. The second important gap I want to, like I already mentioned, that there's a need to have programs that directly impact and that directly address the climate change aspect. We do not need existing programs to be repackaged in a climate change narrative or discourse. We need to have real programs that actually affect the workers who are facing the climate brunt. At People's Courage International, we have started piloting a bunch of actions that address climate vulnerabilities. One of that product is, of course, the parametric insurance that we're going to speak more about. We also established cooling centers across the city, across 4 or 5 cities where outdoor workers can go and get rest, can get the rehydration and other medicines and other support there. Similarly, we have started a pilot program where we are insulating roofs of workers' houses so that the indoor temperature can come down. And we are also kind of training workers to kind of take measures that are under their control in terms of how they can manage heat stress during their work time. So these are the 3 big major gaps in terms of financing, having enough climate adaptation programs, and those programs being catered towards workers and their needs. And I think we also need businesses to join us in these efforts so that we can plug these gaps.
Thank you for that, Rakesh. That number of the breakdown on climate adaptation finance versus the overall space was really stark. With that, I defer to Aarti. Same question. So what do you see as the biggest gap in protecting vulnerable workers in supply chains from climate shocks?
So talking from the point of view of human rights due diligence, in business and human rights, I work with a lot of multinational businesses that want to know how to protect workers in supply chains from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3 and upstream. And what I find is one of the gaps when we're working with global multinational companies that want to implement human rights due diligence is a lack of knowledge about how to protect informal workers in their supply chains that are in different countries, that are far removed from them. And of course, how well do they work with their suppliers in countries like India, across Southeast Asia? And then how do they actually, work on the ground? And often the biggest gap is that informal workers are often internal migrants or international migrants. They don't have proper contracts. They're living hand to mouth. They're not part of any social security scheme, even if that is developing in all Asian countries. So they're just off the grid and they're highly vulnerable. So I'd say one of the biggest gaps in protecting informal workers would be lack of knowledge about such solutions like this. I mean, lack of knowledge about intelligent solutions that are scalable, cost effective, and can actually help companies do something which is actually produced by local actors, national actors, Asian solutions for Asian issues, and I think that's what you're actually exemplifying today.
Thank you for that, Aarti. And lastly, to Ayandev, what do you see as the biggest gap in protecting vulnerable workers in supply chains today?
Yeah, no, thanks, Rohit. So let me start with the biggest irony in this room. When we look at most of the supply chains, the factories that we talk about are insured, the warehouses are insured, the inventories are insured, but the people who are playing the most important role in many of them are not insured. And in some cases, even if they are insured, especially in the formal space, they are not adequately insured from the livelihood protection perspective, right? So when we see some of the insurance in the formal space, it is predominantly life insurance and many times it's an accidental insurance. And this is also, they get protection because it is by law. And when I say it's by law, in many countries, it doesn't get defined how much that amount should be. So again, the adequacy of the insurance amount comes to a question, right? And when it comes to the informal and contractual, there is no insurance, right, in many scenarios. Now, if I look at the supply chain, these institutions buy insurance on a regular basis. And that contributes significant business proportion for the insurance industry. So when we talk of property insurance, it is fire and allied peril policies, burglary insurance, business interruption risk, all these they do buy. Like some of the examples that you are giving, the construction sites, all these construction sites gets insured. But those people who are building those constructions or those towers, those buildings, they are not covered, they do not get adequate insurance. So for me, the biggest gap today, if you ask me, Rohit, is the assets are insured, the assets are protected. The people who are working in those premises and protecting those assets, they remain unprotected. And more importantly, I think I always want to bring this discussion, protection of life to a protection of livelihood. And there is a huge gap between these two, right? I think in the last 20, 30 years, whenever we have dealt with social protection, social security, we have always said we need to protect the life and protect the family. I think the bigger gap today that needs to be addressed is to protect the livelihood, again in the context of climate change.
Thank you for that, Ayandev. It's interesting to know that business does have an appetite for subscribing to insurance, but maybe not just for the worker and not yet just for the worker. So that leads me to my next question, and again back to you. So a slight deep dive. I know we mentioned the word parametric insurance over the course of the last 20 minutes. Can you break down what that means for us? What does it, how does it work? How can it be designed with some real world examples on the ground?
Yes, thanks, Rohit. When it comes to a real life example, I can go on for hours and hours, right, with some of the work that we have been doing. But let me, in this room, first let me explain what is the difference between a normal insurance and a parametric insurance, and why people in the informal sector, they don't buy insurance. I think that's the biggest question that needs to be answered, right? And one of the reasons that people don't buy insurance because people don't trust the entire insurance process. Sorry, I'm come from insurance. I've been working for 20 years, but that's the truth. That's the fact. If you go and talk to anyone, have you ever experienced insurance? They'll say yes, no. Do you want to buy insurance? They'll say no. And why no? Because if something happens, insurance companies will never pay me, right? And this has been the experience of motor insurance, health insurance, property insurance, all traditional products that we can think of, right? And always at the time of claim stage, there is someone who comes to do the loss assessment. In insurance, we use the word surveyor, but these are basically people who are managing the claim process to certify that it's a genuine claim. And that is where the challenge comes in. This guy also comes with a list of inclusion and exclusion. So this guy becomes a judge somewhere to say that your claim is not a legitimate claim for which the payment can happen or for which you'll be paid for, right? And this is the biggest challenge that remains in the insurance sector as why the penetration is so low when it comes to microinsurance, inclusive insurance, or the beneficiaries that we are talking about. And this is where parametric product comes in, which clearly states, as Rohit was mentioning in the initial slides, there are certain parameters. As soon as those parameters are identified, it can be flood, it can be drought, it can be cyclone storm, the wind speed, whatever can be measured. And if we put a threshold to that measurement and say that if these are the trigger points, suppose 42 degrees temperature, as we heard from Rohit, or it can be an AQI level of 350, or it can be a rainfall of 90 millimeter in a single odd day, then there is a payout. So X event happens, Y gets the payout, right? And then there are institutions who provides those data and which are very credible institutions, government, meteorological department, or it can be a satellite data. So there is no one to tamper with that data. And that is where the traditional and parametric stands apart. So now also the payout happens much faster because it's only an institutional level involvement is there when it comes to the data. Now, as I said, Rohit, real examples, there are many. So today we are talking so much of parametric. I started parametric journey way back in 2012 and 13 when we structured the first weather-based index insurance scheme in Bangladesh for paddy farmers. Every year we see a flood in Bangladesh, and there are 2 seasons, and there used to have a significant damage when it comes to rice crops. That's program which started almost like 9 years back. Today, 300,000 farmers, right? It's almost like 500,000 farmer is part of the program without any government subsidy, right? Of course, the parametric index has evolved over time. Again, in the year 2016, we first structured a parametric insurance product for the farmers, apple farmers in Nepal. Again, it's a very commercial crop. It's a very important crop when it comes to the country Nepal. I'm just giving some examples from Asian context. And again, that program still continues today. So it's 9 years, right? It initially started without a subsidy. It became a good example for the government to support the apple farmers. And today the government supports with a subsidy. So there has been a transition. In India, we started with some of the crops which were not part of the National Agriculture Insurance Program. And these were predominantly horticulture crops like French beans, chilies, tomatoes, and these were all insured in a parametric based cover, right? So it goes on, like as Rohit says, so these are some of the Asian examples, and of course the work that we did along together when it comes to AQI is the first world AQI product. Again, there was a mix of index, as Rohit was mentioning. So if you see, there is a heat index, but there was also hospital cash. Again, it was to address some challenges in basis risk and so forth, which will not go in. So there has been a lot of applications in parametric. In short, today, if you ask me in this room, Rohit, wherever we have historical data, and if the data is credible, right, a program or a product can be structured. The most important thing we need to understand where the economic and financial loss is happening at what point, right? So these are some examples, right?
So thank you for that, Ayandev. It's good to know how bespoke the product can be. So over like multiple geographies, multiple climate stresses, as long as there is robust, historical data, we should be able to design a parametric insurance product. And you said intent. I'm guessing I'm going to draw upon your economic. So that the only thing that's missing is intent for businesses to come in and to subscribe for premiums. If they start seeing the financial losses, then maybe there's more incentive for them to come and start. If workers stop coming for work, or if there's high attrition, there's absenteeism, I definitely think that there's going to be more. Please, absolutely.
So if you ask me, just to give some example of parametric to a large industry level, the wind energy today gets insured based on parametric, right? Because based on the speed of the wind, the energy gets generated, right? So there is a significant market on that in parametric. Solar energy, right, gets insured. And I'll give you the starting point of parametric insurance. The hotels, in the European country, there are winter sports, and it all depends on the snowfall, right? So that precipitation, and the temperature were used to protect the hotel business. It still runs, right? So it is not like we're talking 20 years back and the product doesn't exist. So in terms of application of business, even the livestock, and that is again, I'm saying we need to move from protecting a life to protecting livelihood, right? A livestock farmer, this is one of the programs that we are doing. Livestock farmers, the production of the milk significantly changes, or when the temperature increases, and there are signs around it, right? So again, parametric can be used to protect that milk production that got lost because of the temperature.
Thank you for that, Ayandev. The more you speak about all of these examples, it's really obvious that businesses do have an appetite for subscribing for premiums of insurance. Just that maybe as of now, they're not thinking as much because informal, workers are employed informally, so they keep coming and going. So to get more of the business perspective, I defer to Aarti with my next question. So Aarti, a parametric insurance could be seen as a financial product, but at its heart, it's about worker dignity. It's about protecting the workers against income shock and health shock. Where do you see parametric insurance fit in the world of HRDD, responsible business conduct, ESG? Where do you see it fit, and why do you see it fit there?
So thank you for that question. The way that I see it fit in the international let's say in the international sector of business and human rights, is that it is a solution that is, again, a very obvious solution to what sounds like a very common problem from the ground. Where I work with companies, as I run an international human rights consultancy, all of our clients are multinational businesses. All of our clients are multinational businesses that are mainly headquartered in Europe or North America or Australia. And they come to us to come and find advice and technical services on how to reduce human rights, risks of human rights violations in their supply chains. Now, let's just step back, because what these gentlemen are talking about sounds so intelligent and like a no-brainer. But there's no but. From the other side, where multinational corporations are coming from, is that we've got supply chains in Asia, and we have risks, such as in India. India is a high-risk country for us. And a few nodding heads. Thailand is a high-risk country. Malaysia is a high-risk country. And I asked them, why is Thailand a high-risk country? Why is India a high-risk country? And they say, because of the issues of forced labor, because of the issues of modern slavery. And when I say, if you go to India and you speak to your supply chain businesses about forced labor, about modern slavery, do they understand what you're talking about? And most of the time they say, no, they don't. Because the human rights due diligence, mandatory laws around human rights due diligence talk about exploitation in supply chains from a Eurocentric or a Western-centric kind of perspective. But when you go to countries across APAC, Asia Pacific, you're finding very developed economies, fast-moving, rapidly developing economies. A country like India is not just a source country for supply chains, but it's also a market. So what you have is many of these countries are also markets for multinational companies. So it makes it all very complex. So when you're going to and speaking to Asian companies about forced labor, it doesn't make sense, because what we're talking about is a lack of worker protection, a lack of protection of informal workers, rights holders, and supply chains. If you actually talk about it like this, it makes sense. It doesn't make sense if you go and talk about it from a forced labor perspective. So for me, when I come at it from this angle, I'm trying to change the language. Let's change the language. If we're going and finding solutions in countries like India, Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia, let's call it about worker protection. Let's call it something that we want everybody to be a part of. Let's not say we want a forced labor assessment. Nobody wants to really hear that. What you want to hear is you want a safe labor assessment. You want to know about protection of workers. Look for what you want to see rather than what you don't want to see. What do you want to see? You want to see protection of workers. You want to see protection of their livelihoods. And one of the biggest push factors of forced labor or exploitation in any informal sector in any country is emergencies amongst families. It's a health emergency. It's a disaster emergency. It's someone's lost their crop. There is a drought. There is a pollution. And it hits people's livelihoods in a way when they have no safety nets. They do not have access to universal free healthcare. They may not have access to social security like we might do in other countries. And so they're left without a safety net. And that's what makes them more vulnerable into getting into exploitative situations. So my call is that if businesses would be better off, multinational businesses and tier one manufacturing suppliers in the agricultural, FMCG, electronics, garment sector, if you want to protect informal workers against exploitation, you're better off formally having collaborations with an insurance scheme such as this where you actually, and it's not even, as Ian Dev was saying, it's parametric. So there are objectively measurable automatic payouts for difficult situations. You don't have to assess every single person. So this kind of solution is so incredibly intelligent. It's not packaged in a anti-slavery kind of against modern slavery package, because it's about protection. It's actually presented as an intelligent solution to vulnerabilities, and it has everything to do with exactly the kinds of things that multinational corporations are trying to find solutions against. And everybody's scratching their head, but actually the solutions are right here. So that's my little input on that.
Thank you for that, Aarti. Before the session, I was talking to Ian Dev about how cost-effective can parametric insurance be, premiums versus the payout. Just to showcase that when industry has an appetite for subscribing to large ticket insurance for protection of theft, protection of property, I'm guessing these premiums are very high. But when it comes to parametric insurance, where the benefit accrues to the workers that are there, how cost effective is it? Cheap? Is it expensive for the businesses? Can you give some commentary on that?
Yes, thanks, Rohit. Again, this is one of the most tricky thing, to answer, because this is also a product which comes, as you rightly said, you can customize a parametric product based on sector, based on location, based on the income group, but also the premium can be customized. So just to give and make people understand, so if I want to structure, say, a temperature, a heat-related product, I can structure that when the temperature increases, and I'm doing a heat, that means the more the temperature. So if I structure a product where there will be a payout at 50 degrees, there will be a premium rate. If I make it 40 degrees, there will be a premium rate. And if I make it 35, there will be a premium rate. Now the question comes, I have a limited pocket size. I want to pay very less premium. Yes, a product can be structured. You make a temperature of 55 degrees as a trigger point when there will be a payout. It doesn't work, right? Because the product doesn't respond, right? Of course, it's a geographic consideration I'm saying. So the average, and that's where the historical data comes in, because if there is no data, you can't structure even, right? So for me, sometimes we always keep saying this word basis risk, which is a very commonly heard when we speak about parametric. Yes, sometimes the products do carry basis risk because it depends on the topography. If I'm doing a flood cover on a topography which is a hilly country, it sometimes doesn't respond to all the beneficiaries in the geographic location. But many times the basis risk which we say is more at a fault at a product design. And it's a very thin line to differentiate what is a fault in product design, or it was like I just wanted to make the product affordable, so I just reduced the premium rate to 2% to 3%, and I don't want to pay a 10% premium. So that product will still make a payout, but it will be once in 25 years or once in 30 years. So I think it's a tough question. So product can be structured even at 0.005%. It can be even structured at a 25% premium rate, right? So for me, once you say that, if you ask me how the industries, they are buying other products and how they should see this product, I think somewhere they need to see this product as part of their risk management cost or a risk transfer cost. If this industry as well starts thinking this is a philanthropic or this is a CSR that I want to do for the particular segment or beneficiaries that we are talking about, then always this discussion of 1% and 2% will remain in. And end of the day, you might just write an annual report saying that I had covered 100,000 workers, but none of them had received a payout, right? On the other hand, you might say that I have just covered 10,000 important workers like who are working and they got the right benefit out of it. So the narration completely changes, and that is again the flexibility that this product has and on this set of products has, but we need to be very careful,
It's interesting. I mean, there are multiple considerations in product, design. So when you're designing the product, you want the product to be more responsive. So you want it to make it a 1 in 7 year response where the product is giving a payout, but then the premiums are a little bit more costly. If you want 1% premiums, which I'm guessing now is a 1 in 25 year event, which means that over a 25-year period, there are very few payouts. So the trust factor in both the businesses that are paying the premiums and the beneficiaries that are getting the payouts is not there. You need to wait for 25 years and there's one payout. So it's interesting to see that there's a blank canvas across geographies, climate parameters, and even how you play with the premium versus the payout. What is the actual impact on the ground, and how you can design that. It's great to see there's a lot of bespokeness around the design, which just goes to show that it's not like for one particular industry or one particular use case. As long as there is intent, you can tailor make that intent and make it across multiple sectors. So that's very interesting feedback. Next, I move to Rakesh. So Rakesh, you worked very closely with a lot of migrant and informal workers. From their perspective, why do you think business should think about climate vulnerabilities a lot more that are faced by the workers? And how do you see parametric insurance impacting the workers?
I want to answer this question about climate vulnerabilities and informal workers and the responsibility of business from an occupation safety and health angle. A lot of us have worked on this, and we of course, there have been a lot of struggles in terms of establishing business responsibility in occupation safety and health. But traditionally, there's always been a difference between workplace accidents and workplace related illnesses. So in workplace accidents, it has always been easy to establish the responsibility of business because the accident happens at the factory floor or it happens at a construction site. It's immediate and it's very clear. But when it comes to a lot of occupation-related illness, whether it's silicosis, asbestosis, it could be musculoskeletal disorders, cancers, respiratory diseases, fixing the accountability on the employer on the illness aspect has always been very difficult. Even in cases like silicosis, where the evidence is far beyond reproach, far beyond any doubt, even after that stage, it has been difficult to hold the employers accountable, mostly because they come from informal sector. So my fear when it comes to climate vulnerabilities and informal sector is that even the climate vulnerabilities is somehow, I'm worried that they will go the occupational diseases route, where people will not kind of immediately see this as linked to their work and they will not take the responsibility for that. That's one aspect. There's also an aspect of where businesses will try to externalize this. I mean, somebody could just say, this is climate change. What do you expect me to do about it? But if you really look deep, it is workers facing risks in performance of a duty, in performance of responsibilities for a factory or for an employer. So even though the environment might be external, the cause and the issues happening in their carrying out their responsibilities as workers. So it cannot be externalized, saying that climate change is an external event. So over a period of year, there's been very well established standards and responsibilities and accountability when it comes to occupation safety and health. Businesses are duty bound to ensure that workers are safe from accident at workplace, and that there should be enough safety to ensure that they do not have long-term health impact or they do not catch any diseases or have any infections because of their work. And I think businesses should now realize that even climate vulnerabilities falls in the same bracket and in the same argument. Like you would have safety measures at your workplace to prevent accidents, like you have safety measures to prevent illnesses, we need to start thinking about safety measures to support support workers from climate vulnerabilities and to kind of figure out solutions what can happen there. And some of them are very basic. I know it's 2025 and we are still talking about access to safe drinking water and toilet facilities, but unfortunately we still have to. So some of them are like factory or floor level everyday kind of events, ensuring these kind of facilities are available. When there is a heat stress, staggering the work between early mornings and evenings instead of having the work in the middle of the afternoon. So there are different things that can be managed at the floor level or the site level. And then another place to start is also the parametric health insurance. And we know from experience that given the income levels of workers and the wages that they receive, any sort of insurance like health insurance or medical insurance is not something that they can think about. It's not in the immediate, because they're always thinking about day-to-day survival. So industry and businesses will have to take the lead in paying for this, in paying for the premium and taking responsibility on this.
Thank you, Rakesh. Actually, in the way that you explained how some of these climate vulnerabilities are simple, the daily visible, thought came to my mind. I was discussing with a stakeholder from a ready-made garment industry. So we were talking about the heat stress that workers face in the shop floor, and they're not given enough hydration breaks. And we were thinking about very simple, very low touch solutions on the factory floor. Have a thermostat with the monitors so that the supervisors in the factory are also aware of how hot it is. So they're a lot more receptive when they hear complaints from the workers in the shop floor that it's really hot, I need a water break, I need to go to the restroom. The solution seemed very simple to me, but it does not exist, right? To just have a thermostat up there, because they're unable to distinguish what a 45 degrees is versus a regular Tuesday of the week, right? So simple solutions do exist, not just parametric insurance, there are early warning systems as well. So, I mean, the examples that you gave, it just resonated with multiple conversations I've had in the past. With multiple things that you have said, Ayandev, you've said that there's a blank canvas, there requires some industry intent for you to start designing an insurance product. So my guess is you need to collaborate with multiple set of actors. So without a series of collaborations, it becomes very difficult to design parametric insurance. So what innovative cross-sector collaborations between insurers, businesses, and sometimes even governments and worker groups do you see as vital to ground parametric insurance as a day-to-day?
Absolutely, and first of all, even before moving to partnership, let me draw the thread of health. So which we generally don't discuss. We just say health for the informal sectors is important. It has an intergenerational issue as well, right? Like the way you were saying, like the workers who are working in the polluted environment with high level of AQI, smog, it actually impacts lungs, right? And imagine she is mom, right? Or going to be mom, and it passes on. And there are evidence, in terms of showing that how this impacts across generation, right? So since it impacts not only today's workforce, it also impacts future workforce. It's very important that this matter cannot remain just between business and the insurance sector. It has to go to the public point as well, which is the government bodies needs to recognize this. The unions or the associations of the workforce needs to recognize this, right? As I said, as long as this should be seen as a cost or this should be seen as a law for enforcement, there will be always violation, right? Either I will prefer to go away from it or I will do whatever is required basic just to abide to the law, right? So I think, yes, first of all, there is a lot of collaboration is required, even as organizations in most of our African programs where we are trying to do insurance specifically for these segments. We are talking about with the governments, with the development partners. One of the things which we are talking to the government and somewhere we touched base upon is on safety net and social protection. Most of the countries have social registries. And these social registries are also used to do cash transfer whenever there is any natural calamities or disasters. Actually, we can build insurance along with these social registries. And we ensure that that cash transfer that the government is doing, keeping the money aside, that can be used far more efficiently by using 10% of the overall budget. And through a market mechanism, people actually receives the cash when the disaster happens. And they don't need to wait for 2 months or 3 months because sometimes budget reallocation takes time, right? So there's a lot of merit from a government perspective. It goes without saying, Rohit, as I mentioned, for industry, they have to just see it as a risk management, right? All of them stand alone cannot solve this problem. It goes without saying. And that is also one of the reasons, as I said, and I started by saying 2013 parametric was there, right? Today we are talking about 2024. And if we go in some of the conference, it still seems that people don't know about parametric insurance, or even some people they know it in a negative connotation, right? They say, no, that product doesn't work, right? So I think what is more important is everyone has to come together, right? The beneficiaries needs to understand the product. The private sector needs to see it as part of their business, right? And not see it just as a cost. It is a long term, as I said. Government needs to address many of the climate related issues because it is not the issue of today. It is also the issue for the future generation, right? To have a productive labor force is so important, right? And in all this context, I think the insurance company also needs to understand to design a viable product, which is far more responsive rather than just giving a product to the market. And I think if all this works together, then the partnership actually going to sustain for long.
I have a question
Yes, please,
actually for Andiv. So I completely agree about the partnership approach. I'm thinking about industry membership bodies, certification schemes that are sector specific. They might be global or they may be focused on a particular country. Could, if it was seen as a risk, and I really agree with your approach that it should be part of risk management, it shouldn't be philanthropy, it shouldn't be CSR, it's actually a risk, yeah, right. What if industry standards, let's just take any sector, it could be an agricultural sector, it could be minerals, it could be aquaculture, could that certification body or could that audit scheme or could that industry membership body have as part of their risk reduction, risk mitigation measure standard, have a mandated, what would you call it? Parametric insurance program. So if you want to get certified for your farms or for your workers or for your industry, you must have cover all of your workers with parametric insurance for these indicators. So we've got the AQI, we've got the heat, there could be others, right? And then the second question, I'm going to put it in one, is if that was possible, could it cover cross-border migrant workers who may be undocumented? Right, so that's my two questions.
No, first of all, the first point is yes, and that's the way out, right? Today, if you look at, I'm not saying that we are doing pretty well when it comes to child labor. We all still know it's a problem. It remains, right? But it has been addressed to some extent, right? Because today there are many industries which doesn't allow export if the industry is employing child labor, right? So it has come by law somewhere, right? And that is the reason I said it has to come by law. There has to be a strong enforcement. So I completely like your idea, and that's the way out, right? Because otherwise, if we just leave it to make it happen and feel good about it, it is not going to happen, right? We all love to be in laws, right? We all need a police, right? And then only we follow. So I agree with you. And that is how the trade practice needs to happen. And as soon as it happens, it crosses borders, right? So there can be federations of various trade agencies. In fact, just to give a context, there is an Africa Free Trade Agreement, AFTA, AFCTA, and they have put some of these clauses, but of course they have not gone to the insurance, but they have somewhere touched base upon the people who are working, who are part of these trades, right? And they needs to be protected. So somewhere it is there, and that's the way out. Across border migration and how to solve them, yes, remittance insurance is becoming one big driven agenda, but I think there is a lot of work needs to be done still within the insurance sector, right? In terms of how can I take care of those workers who are going and working offshore, right? And provide them protection, right? While they are there. Sometimes those products are very expensive and so forth, right? Also because again, insurance is quite defined by the law of the land, right? So those challenges are there, right? But yes, there is a huge space that needs to be worked upon, especially also for their families who are staying back in the country, right?
What about, let's say in Thailand, we have a big construction sector here, and this insurance was tested and piloted in the Indian construction sector. In Thailand, a lot of the construction workers are from Burma, from Myanmar, and from Cambodia. It may be that some of them are undocumented. I won't comment. Could a construction company in Thailand take this insurance for their potentially undocumented workers in their construction sector?
Yes, of course. As more importantly, just to put another context, most of these climate risk gets insured at a reinsurance level, right? So the reinsurers are those who are protecting the insurance companies. And one of the things, sustainability of this sort of program is the spread of risk, right? So from an insurance technical point of view, yes, whatever is working, and if the risk remains the same, it can actually be covered across geography. So suppose if the smog is a challenge in a city like Delhi, if that same challenge remains in the city of Dhaka in Bangladesh, can we structure the program? The answer is yes. So what I was thinking more from the same insurance companies writing the scheme, we can't do that, but there can be a local insurance company in Thailand or local insurance company in Bangladesh who will underwrite the risk and become an insurance company for the end beneficiary. Might be even the reinsurer protecting those two insurance companies in two geographies can still be the same. Yeah. So it's a workable solution, and we will discuss after the session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. Now, just a closing comment. So, just a quick rapid fire question for all three panelists. In one sentence, what is the single most important step a businesses should take tomorrow if they want to protect their workers from climate vulnerability? So, I'm going to start with Rakesh.
Okay, in one sentence, I think businesses should start looking at going beyond the tier 1 and tier 2 and kind of understand that there's a whole lot of informal workers army that is supporting their business, and therefore take care of them as well when it comes to climate vulnerabilities.
Thank you. Next, Andy.
For me, it can be one sentence, but I want you to frame it. I'll give 4 words which are very important, right? From an insurance perspective, I have seen a lot of programs just gets piloted. There are development partners, I'm sorry to say, and they have its natural death. So for me, the biggest important point is sustainability, right? The sustainability is the key. Now, to drive a sustainability in an insurance program, there are 4 other S words which supports it. The first is the scale. If there is no scale, and if I just want to cover 500 people, 200 people, it doesn't work, right? Especially when it comes to a climate risk solutions, because the product becomes expensive, it doesn't succeed. So the scale is very important to have. Second is, I have seen many proposals where we say we do 500, we start with 200, then we reach 200,000 in next 5 years. It doesn't work. Speed is equally important from an insurance parlance to reach that scale. The third is the spread of risk, which was one of your solution, and it just actually works in insurance. If you are insuring similar sort of risk across geography, it is actually the fundamental of insurance, that is spread of risk. The fourth, which is absolutely pertaining to parametric insurance, is the skill and the knowledge. I think there's still a huge room for the people and the actors to understand how the product works. So if this 4S works, sustainability should be the way. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Andy. That I cannot put that in one sentence for sure, but that that was very insightful. So, and lastly, Aarti.
I think the one thing, and it's I guess borrowing from my fellow panelists, is a scalable, cost-effective solution that can provide some level of minimum protection for the informal workers in beyond tier 2. And this is a solution that is homegrown and supported solution, and it's nothing is being helicoptered in from another part of the world. And this is why it is probably highly effective. So that's one thing. So what I'd like to do is invite any multinational corporations or industry bodies that might be watching this online at some future point as well, is to perhaps collaborate, because what would be better is to have industry collaboration in a particular sector, let's say cotton or sugar or any other agricultural product that I can think of at the moment, where a lot of companies are scratching their heads about how are they going to protect tier 4 informal workers that move from one part of India to another part of India. Well, why don't you all come together, put one large amount of money in a pot and test out parametric insurance. And then find out how it works. I don't think it would cost that much money compared to other programs that are being invested in. So that's what I'd say.
So thank you so much, Aarti. That was a great call to action also, by the way. In my mind, I'm glad you told. With that, we'll just end the panel discussion and we'll open it up for questions. If any of you have any questions, we'll just take some questions. I see a hand up in the back. There's a microphone. I see a couple of hands. Okay, that's great. Just pass around a microphone and just introduce yourself, and then you can pose the question. And then, I'm audible. Okay, we'll be done in about 2 minutes.
Hello, yeah. So Mahendra from Impact. I think it's a very enlightening session, and I don't know why it's happening downstairs. Many people don't know this. Yeah. I think in like recently they have during the heat season in India, we have in Rahman Loya Hospital in Delhi, we have the ice bath tubes and all, where the workers many come from the heat station. So I think in that scenario this looks. So my question is that because in this insurance this product looks a little bit complicated because there are so many moving parts of the the claims and payouts, and whether the moral hazard of payouts being misutilized, and who will be the insurer, who will be subsidizing the cost, and also the contractors, subcontractors. I'm thinking the challenge of implementing in a supply chain, let's say a garment factory, where like I have worked in grievance mechanisms, where we go into the factory and immediately you feel like, if it's a leather factory, you immediately feel the heat of the whole area. So I'm thinking about the different, so many moving parts, technical assessment and all that. And do you think this all can become a hindrance to scale it at a level, where, because of so many barriers? Yeah.
Thank you for that question. We're running short of time, so we'll just take the second question and a quick response from the panelists, and then we'd like to end.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Patumdi from the National Human Rights Commission of Nigeria. I'm quite particularly interested in this topic. I'm sorry I came in a bit late because I was just, in fact, I stumbled into this place and I'm glad I stayed back. I heard Ian Dev talking about the AFTA, and in addition to the AFTA, we're looking at the issue of freedom of movement of persons protocol within the AU, and with that comes a lot of cross-cutting movements of people from one country to the other. How do we see, perhaps I want to have some taking I can take home and see how we can implement this. How do we begin to protect the rights of workers, migrant workers, who are working in perhaps home companies, let's say Indian companies or Asian companies working abroad? How do they get to be protected using this parametrics, and then perhaps mirroring the AU movement of freedom of movement of people across the continent? Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just defer to the panelists who would like to take that. And a quick response, because we're already pressed for time.
I just want to respond to your question. I have actually, I'm glad you've said you're from Nigeria. I've done a lot of work in West Africa, particularly in the cocoa sector. And I think that a lot of the agricultural sector worldwide, but particularly, for example, with me working in cocoa in West Africa, why don't we have certification standards that require this kind of insurance, number one? Because then the sector is protected. It doesn't matter where the people come from if they come over the border, And that was my question to Ayandev. And the other thing I wanted to say is that you said, what if a company is coming and working, a foreign company is coming and working, like an Indian company working in Thailand or something like this? So I think that it's the government again. Now, if what we see is that a lot of foreign companies are coming into another country like Cambodia or Thailand and setting up, let's say, garment factories. What if the government said, if you want to come and work and set up an operations or factory in this country, then you must take this minimum level of insurance for your workers? So it's about setting a risk reduction measure. I think that would be the solution, is by setting the somebody has to set the standard. So yeah.
And Dave, you want to quickly respond to the first one?
Yeah, so on the first one, yes, it's a challenge, right? When it comes to get all the stakeholders in the same room and have a buy-in, so that still remains a challenge, right? But in terms of the loss assessment, the things that you are mentioning, somewhere the parametric product actually is designed to address them. So there'll be no surveyor, no one to certify, whether he's actually got stroke because of the heat or temperature. As soon as there is a temperature, whether he visits the hospital or not, there will still be a payout. So that part will be taken care of. In terms of the government institutions or even the business houses, making the insurance premium payment on behalf of the workers, the construction workers or the migrant laborers, that still remains a challenge, right? And that is where I said that they need to see it from a business point of view.
Thank you. Of course, the panelists are available after the session as well. We're pressed for time. We have a session waiting outside. So I'd like to thank the panelists for their time today and the insights that they've provided as part of the panel discussion. And also a special thanks to the audience who paid attention over the course of the last 1 hour. So thank you to you as well. With that, we wrap up for today. And thank you very much. I'll see you around.